This is Mark Pillow from Superman 4, Nuclear Man, and you're listening to the All-Star Superfan podcast.
We talk Superman, and we know what's happening. We talk Superman, and we cover everything.
Hello everyone and welcome to All-Star Superfan Podcast, the show where we celebrate the near 90-year legacy of the Man of Steel and the incredible stories that keep him soaring to this day. I'm Alan Burke and today we are discussing what might be the biggest lost media breakthrough in the history of Superman cinema. For over 40 years, fans of Superman 4 The Quest for Peace have traded stories, looked at blurry production stills and wondered about the what-ifs of the legendary deleted Metroclub sequence. It was a scene thought to be lost to the phantom zone of film history, until now. Joining me tonight is a man who needs no introduction to the collecting community. He is a historian, a guardian of the Donnerverse legacy, the curator of Supermania, and the man who actually helped to bring this lost media back to life. Please welcome to the show the man of the hour, Mr. Martin Lakin. Martin, thank you so much for joining us again on All-Star Superfan Podcast.
Well, thank you, Alan. What an incredible introduction when you hear it back like that. That that really gives me credit that I don't think I'm particularly due, but nonetheless, it's wonderful to hear. So thank you very much, and it's great to be back on the podcast again. It's been a while since I spoke to you, gents.
Yeah, it has been a while. I was only thinking of that myself. It has been a while. You were on originally, I think, back around 2021, not long after we launched the podcast to talk about Supergirl. And then you came back on, I think, the following year to discuss Masters of the Universe 1987. The masterpiece that is. And what a year to be discussing Masters of the Universe with a new movie coming out. Have you seen the trailer? Any thoughts on that before we get into Superman 4?
I have, of course, yeah. I'm from what I can see in the trailer, I'm kind of happy that they've gone a route where it's humorous, at least. You know, it does seem to be kind of a light-hearted. I don't think that, again, it's another one of these things where you can't eclipse what's gone before, and if anything, I'm even more of a fan of the 1987 original than I was before. So, you know, it doesn't mean that, you know, when something new comes along that these things get disregarded, because they don't, as long as, you know, old sorts like me are around to keep them alive. But yeah, I'm really open to seeing what, and the kid, the guy that they've got to play He-Man looks like he's a capable enough fella. So I anticipate it greatly, shall we say.
Yeah, we discussed it recently on the show. I said I got my daughter into the old Filmation cartoon when she was very young, and she still loves it. She'll be 7 this year, but she is really, really excited for the movie this year. And she enjoys the 87 one. She thinks it's a little bit slow, not enough He-Man in it, but she's really looking forward to it. I actually listened to on my commute home today. I listened to the most recent episode. I don't know if you listened to Inglorious Treksperts. It's a Star Trek podcast. But they actually had Dolph Lundgren on. The guys who host it do a lot of cons and panels and stuff, and Dolph was on it, and he was speaking a little bit to Masters of the Universe 87, and he was saying he found it very he finds it very interesting, the fact that when he was at cons for the last 20 years, it was mostly, the majority of stuff was all Rocky 4 memorabilia and photographs and stuff, but over the last kind of 10 years, he said it's kind of neck and neck now with Masters, which I found very funny. It was a great interview. He's such a well articulated, he's really intelligent guy. I forgot that. I keep forgetting how smart that guy is. And he's got like 2 master's degrees in like chemical engineering and stuff. It's incredible. But that we're not here to talk about Masters of the Universe, Martin. We are here to talk about Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. Lost media. So I have a little bit of a fascination with lost media. I don't know if you're like me. I always find it interesting. We have, there's a tapestry of old kind of silent movies that have been lost to time. We nearly lost the famous Nosferatu after a court case back in the 20s when Bram Stoker's wife took the makers of that movie to court, and the judge ordered that all copies of the film be destroyed, and thankfully someone managed to save one, and that is the only reason we have that movie today. But lost media when it comes to Superman 4 has really been a topic of conversation for many years. For listeners who don't really know the history of the quest for peace, Martin, can you give us a little bit of a run through just for those who may not be up to speed with it?
Well, absolutely, and what you have to bear in mind is that this the fourth part of the series is no different than the preceding three in terms of the fact that a hell of a lot of stuff was shot. An incredible amount of footage was, there are reels and reels of this stuff. And luckily, over the years, we've been treated to that particular material has been released sporadically, probably culminating in the television cut of Superman the movie from '78, where the TV version of that, or the longest version of that, which again, just like you described, we thought would never see the light of day, was not only released, but it was released in anamorphic, and it was released in its entirety, and it was the biggest treat we could ever have. It's my go-to version of the film now, as it is with a lot of fans. And so there's a TV version of Superman 2, there's a TV version of Superman 3. And on and on and on. But in terms of Superman 4, because it was made by a different company, it was made by Cannon Films, London Cannon Films, by producers Golan and Globus. They were on a mission because they'd spent a lot of money on the property in the first instance, by buying it from the Solkinds, that they needed a big return on their investment, and they thought that the property alone would, in and of itself, would be enough to guarantee a box office return. Therefore, they didn't care, or they didn't prioritize making that movie in terms of spending the money in comparison to what had been spent on the prior chapters. They thought they could do it on the cheap, and indeed they did. And ironically, Masters of the Universe is where the vast proportion of the budget was diverted to, because I think they had, I can't remember how many pictures they had in production at the time, all at the same time. And it was only a matter of months until the company collapsed entirely, but they managed to get these things made. And so consequently, Superman 4 was unfinished, or at least the effects budget was slashed to the point where they just literally threw everything they could at it to just get the damn thing done. In terms of like having 90 minutes of coherent footage. Of course, after a test screening of the initial finished film, it was decided that they would cut, or the actual quote was, lose 2 reels. So a vast chunk of that stuff that they had shot was dropped.
And this is an infamous test screening, really. It's kind of become a legendary test screening, hasn't it?
Well, we found out that there was actually a few. There was one in the UK, apparently, as well as San Antonio, Texas, where it just scored so horribly because, audiences were taken with the fact that you can't. The whole thrust of it is that you can't fool an audience. You can't use the same flying shot 15 times throughout the picture and expect audiences not to latch onto it. All these shortcuts that they made are so completely obvious, so you can't get away from that. And so the idea was we can only salvage something, and to do that we're going to cut it down to 90 minutes. And therefore, you have to remember back in the day with cinemas, when you used to sell the time slots, you could get so many more performances during the day for a 90-minute film than you could do for a 120-minute, let's say. It was just easier to do that. And so they just, again, made the economical decision, that's what we'll do. And consequently, you lose a huge chunk of the story. And in Superman 4's case, it some of it just doesn't make any sense at all.
Was that done against Sidney J. Fury's wishes, Martin, or was that a solely a canon decision, or did he have a say in that? Do you know?
I think that Sidney Fury was completely frustrated by the whole thing. I think for all the material that I've read and everything that at the time, the pressure he was under to deliver it, because I don't think it even had a particularly long schedule either, and he knew that that he was against the clock in terms of trying to get this thing done. And so when it tested horribly, I think he pretty much just washed his hands of it and let Canon do with it what they will. I mean, he's still around, bless him. I think he's like 94 years old or something now, but he won't be drawn on the subject, I don't think. It's not a fond memory for him. So it's not a terrific experience that he wants to look back on, but which is a shame, because I think that times have certainly changed, and there is such an outpouring of affection for some reason for this film that I think if he had any real idea of how people genuinely felt about it and the affection they have towards it, things might be different. But yeah, I think he just kind of let it slide.
Every Superman movie, and I'm not going to lie, I know I have a Superman 4 poster here beside me, but I'm not going to lie, it's not my favourite Superman movie, it's not many people's, but every Superman movie is somebody's first Superman film. Every Superman film is their first time seeing him in the cinema, and whether it's an air quote good film or not, it doesn't really matter when you're 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years of age and you're just there with your mother, your father, and your friends, and you're in that world, and that the nostalgia of that, and these people grow older then, and they carry that with them, and so I can absolutely understand that. And of course we know that Christopher Reeve himself was very disappointed with the final product of the film, because obviously he contributed to the writing of it and the story, and obviously he wanted it to go in a vastly different direction than it ended up being. Can you speak to that?
I think one of the reasons, again, what you say is absolutely true. A lot of it is the nostalgia of having been there for whichever Superman film you were looking to see first time around in the cinema. Mine was 3, which I didn't. I feel the same way about part 3 that you feel about part 4. And it's because that you can, from my point of view, you can really tell that having been kind of dragged back, really, having said that he wasn't going to do it again, that for Superman 4, that it's like, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to put my stamp on it, and therefore, yes, I am going to commit to writing a story. Yes, I am going to do something that I think Superman should be passionate about, and yes, I am going to find new dimensions in the part that maybe hadn't been exploited before. Because, to be fair to the guy, he had the opportunity. They literally threw everything they could at him in order to get him back to do the part. That's all they cared about. There wasn't any particular command from above to say this is what needs to happen to continue the series. It was all on Chris, and so Chris decided to run with it. And I think that what I enjoy about it is you can plainly see, even if the execution wasn't anywhere close to what it should have been, you can plainly see through him, because he is on terrific form in that picture. His performance in that is as everything else around him kind of collapses, he's still as straight and as focused and as laser sharp as he ever was in the previous 3 pictures, because he knows that this is the story that he wants to tell. And so one of my favourite aspects of it is like at the beginning, the Smallville scenes. Unfortunately, there's another shot there where he said his parents' gravesites, which we've still yet to find, but who knows? And he's somewhere in between the 2 identities. So he's clearly in his Superman mode in terms of being, relaxed and carrying himself quite casually. But then he's got no glasses on, so he's not Clark either. And then
he's the real person.
He's
in that moment.
He's the real person. He's the one that doesn't have to be either or. And it's really good that when he does flip into either of the identities. There's a clear kind of transformation. So it's kind of the inverse of what he did in Superman the movie, where he takes the glasses off and then stands up another 4 inches and whatnot. So there's all that to, if you're a fan, that you can enjoy. And what you've probably noticed as well in the earlier pictures is that Superman doesn't say much at all. He says hi, and you're
a friend,
just a friend, for whatever, you disease maniac and stuff like that. So to actually hear him talk so eloquently about a subject that it's probably more relevant now than ever, to make that speech about nuclear arms. I mean, it's quite simplistic and it's very idealistic, but to stand there and say that, as a species or as a race, that, he's proud of our achievements and doesn't want to see us basically destroy ourselves, was a pretty brave thing to do at the time. And it's, that's against good advice as well. I mean, he ran with that idea. He'd even put it past Tom Mankiewicz, the writer of the first Superman film, and Richard Donner, who they tried to get back before they got Wes Craven on board to direct, and eventually Sidney Furie. But he went against all the advice to say, look, don't do anything that Superman can solve. Don't do anything that Superman real world can cure. So don't look at world hunger. Don't look at that kind of thing. But, sure as hell went ahead and did it, because that was something he was passionate about. And so that's why I enjoy the whole thrust of Superman 4. The rest of it, the silliness is kind of residual, because I can see what the intention was behind it.
Yeah, and there's definitely the argument to make that out of the sequels, that this probably had the absolute best intentions out of all of the sequels. I mean, a lesser man could have easily had phoned this in at this point. You're 8 or 9 years into it. You're back. He could have phoned it in, taken the check and walked away, but he didn't. He really put his blood and his sweat and his tears into it. And I think that's why in his book, like in Still Me, his autobiography, his memoir, he says, the less said about Superman 4, the better. But I think reading that it was just because it was such a painful wound to him that it had ended up the way that it did, despite his best efforts. You spoke earlier of the cuts that were made, so we lost huge amounts of the footage, of the original footage before we saw the theatrical release. A huge portion of that film revolved around, or a significant portion of that film revolved around the fact that there was originally a Nuclear Man 1. So we obviously have Mark Pillow. Mark Pillow's in the theatrical version, the version we've all seen. Mark Pillow plays Nuclear Man. But in the original version, there was a pre-Nuclear Man, played by Clive Mantle. And all of that footage was cut out. That whole that entire story element was completely cut. Can you kind of speak to that a little bit, or what the original intention was in relation to Nuclear Man 1?
After decades of waiting, I think it was 2006 when Returns came out, and we had the DVD set. And I remember seeing, I can't remember where it came from, but somebody posted up the list for the BFI. The BBFC, a list of all the deleted scenes that were going to release on the DVDs, and oh gosh, what a day that was! I was in tears at the prospect of seeing that. But even then, I noticed that there was a one glaring omission from that list. So yes, the whole subplot of Nuclear Man 1 was that Lex Luthor's first attempt to clone Superman using his DNA turns out horribly, because there's not enough power to mutate the genes. Anyway, there's a lot of bump, but what it ultimately means is that he generates this kind of Frankenstein-style monster that a lot of comic book aficionados were really pleased with, because and including myself, because my first thought was, that's Bizarro. And anybody familiar with a Bizarro character from the comics will take one look at that character and think, wow, that's what Bizarro would look like if you were going to commit him to celluloid, because you couldn't do it in the comic book style. You couldn't have a character with a chain and a rock around it saying Bizarro #1. That just wouldn't be filmic. It just wouldn't work. But I tell you who did do a great job of it. That was John Byrne, who only a year previously in his miniseries Man of Steel had done a terrific version of that, and it's very, very similar to. He's that one issue is kind of a combination of Superman's 3 and 4, and he does it so well.
Yeah, we covered that issue last year, but if anybody wants to check out, and Rob's not here to sing his praises, but if anybody wants to check out an absolutely superb Bizarro, it's Douglas Barry Myers, and the Superboy TV show does a phenomenal job, despite the fact that he's wearing all the white clubby kind of makeup and, you know, prism masks and stuff. It's we had him on. Rob interviewed him last year on the show as well, and it was a great interview. I wasn't available to take part in that one, but it was a great interview. But yeah, you're right. Nuclear Man 1, especially when we get to the footage that we'll talk about in a moment, Nuclear Man 1 is definitely a very strong shade of Bizarro, of what Bizarro could have been in this universe in the 1980s, especially, you know. Yeah,
well, and the fun part, obviously, I mean, Clive Mantle did a wonderful job of, you know, you get a real sense of the fact that he was wild and could not be contained, and kind of playful, and the fight that he has with Superman, that, you know, it again looked unfinished because it was. In that was one thing to see him in the fight with the, you know, pushing the cars together and having all those crunchy. Again, it reeks of ambition. But the execution, you know, there's a clear kind of delineation between the script page and the storyboards to what was actually shot, and, you know, he doesn't get lost. Clive's performance doesn't get lost among you. You look at him the whole time thinking, wow, he's so odd. You know, he's so weird. Why is he giggling, and why is he, you know, why is he trying to kind of mock Superman at every turn? So it's nothing short of entertaining. And when I spoke to Clive about it, because I've met Clive a couple of times, he has real trouble looking at anything related to it, because I took along a still that I printed off for him to sign at one con or other a while ago, and you know, he just kind of looks so wistfully at these things, and, you know, I don't think he actually wants to talk about it anymore. I think that, you know, he's kind of done, because at the time he was so kind of hurt by what had gone on.
Well, that's definitely true, because I reached out to Clive personally about, maybe 2 years ago now, and he was very nice, but he basically said that he was like, look, I don't really want to talk about it anymore. I invited him on the show to chat about it, and he like that. He just made it clear that it was a kind of a painful memory, and you can imagine him being cast in a Superman sequel as one of the main villains, and then, like, when did he find out that he wasn't going to be in the movie? Did he find out when he was sitting in the cinema?
Oh yeah. Oh no, he found out something like a week before.
Oh my
God. The reason he's so hurt by the whole experience was that he'd probably gone around and told everybody that he knew that he was in this, because you have to put yourself back in 1986. There were no other superhero style pictures. Superman was it, and it was it for right up until '89, where Batman kind of took it and ran with it. But it was a huge, huge deal, the Superman films. Everybody loved them. Everybody, you know, they were held in the same kind of regard as Star Wars, where the fandom for it was, you know, probably at its peak. And so he went and, you know, told everybody that he had a fairly decent part in this. And so I think he'd invited his mum to the premiere or something like that. And, you know, you kind of, you throw that out there to people and say, this is going to be brilliant. And only to get a phone call from Canon to say, actually, Clive, we've had to leave your entire part on the cutting room floor, not just a couple of scenes, not just a sequence or two, but your entire contribution to that picture is no more. I mean, how would you feel? You know, it's dreadful, isn't it? So I don't blame him one bit, but it's interesting now, because I think the only way to make it up to him, I think the only way that you could get anywhere near to try and apologise for what's gone on, is to get everything that he was involved in and plop it back into a version of the film and ask his permission if that's okay to throw it out there with his well overdue credit, because that's what he deserves. He should have been in the credits at the beginning of that film.
Speaking to that, one of the holy grail sequences of this entire lost media version of Superman 4: The Quest for Peace has always been infamously the Metroclub scene, which, for anybody who doesn't know, there was stills. We saw images of Clark Kent and Lacey Warfield going to a nightclub, and they kind of briefly mention it in the theatrical version. There's a reference to it, but we've seen pictures of them. We knew that this was filmed. Can you tell us about what you knew about the scene before the footage came to light?
I can't even tell you how many years I've dreamt of this. I don't know why. I have no idea why I was so thoroughly possessed by this particular. I think it's because you say,
you were destined to be the person who brought it back. That's why.
Well, I was just pleased to have a hand in it in the end. But I think it's because we knew damn well that it had been shot. Every single last frame of what had been scripted. We do have that. We do have the script. We even have the budget for what they used for the
facade.
Facade of the nightclub itself, which is bolted onto the side of one of the Elstree studios. We knew that existed. I'd got a still of that. I'd just been raking trying to find stuff on this particular scene, because I just from the script alone I knew it was going to be something a bit special, because again it was Christopher Reeve interacting with Lacey Warfield, Mariel Hemingway's character, and it served no other purpose really than to have a bit of character development in an environment that Clark Kent wouldn't ordinarily be around in. So it was from that point of view alone. And then of course you have Clive Mantle showing up and just blowing the whole thing while they're trying to have a romantic encounter. It's ruined by this mutant that shows up and starts throwing people around everywhere. So, of course I was looking forward to seeing that. I was so wounded when it didn't arrive on that DVD set and was amongst all the deleted scenes. And for the life of me, I couldn't figure out why. I was like, well, if you've got that work print and you've got that, you've got every other sequence pretty much, then where is that? Because that was a substantial scene. It turns out that it's only 5 minutes long anyhow, or thereabouts. But it does. When you see it, it does. You can imagine it playing a pretty integral part in the picture, because it explains a great deal of stuff away from the plot that is referred to later on.
And did you ever find out why they didn't include it originally in that DVD in those deleted scenes? Was there ever a reason why? Is it lost to the studio even, maybe?
Well, we had a theory, and obviously, if I can go back to where it was, kind of made clear to me that this had been found, because me being the cynic that I am, when I get people email me a lot saying, "Oh, I've got something that that you're going to like," and I kind of go, "Yeah." I'm sure you do, but I was pretty far down on the list when it came to this. I think the discovery was made at some point last year, and it was passed on to a few people. One of them being my really good friend Jim Bowers. And I think the first thing that Jim said was, "There's a guy that you should really show this to."
Yeah, I'm the wrong guy.
Really, it's as much as I love this, I think that you would really be better served showing this poor guy and putting him out of his misery for all this time by showing the. And so I, having been told that there's something I have that you would like to see, and me going, I'm not sure that's the case, that I got I got an email, and I was at work at 5 o'clock in the morning, because I do ridiculous shifts, and I just downloaded this thing, and it was a really, really weird looking video taken on a phone of a portable TV with a video player, one of those old style things. And I was like, well, what in God's name is this? And as it progressed, it just, because anybody that's seen the clip online will see that there's a couple of seconds of the scene preceding it, which is the scene with Lex Luthor and Lenny, where Lenny's defaced a whole bunch of 10x8s of Christopher
Reeve, yeah.
And then it cuts straight into this scene, and I nearly dropped my phone into my cornflakes, because I was like, oh my God, because there is no, for anybody thinking that this is AI or this is any kind of something, anything other than what it actually is. As soon as I saw the first frame, I was like, oh my God, finally, here it is. And so speechless and watched the whole thing, and then just to be sure that I wasn't hallucinating, watched it again, and then to be sure, watched it again. But Alan, can you imagine finding? I mean, it's the lost ark.
Yeah.
Or at least from my point of view, it's something that when you've been looking for so long, and frankly have given up, because all those wonderful stills that we've got from that sequence, and as I say, the script and everything else. And the fact that it doesn't seem like it's going to get another official release. They had, when they did the 4K release recently, Warner Brothers did an absolute dog's dinner of,
they did,
throwing it out there again with the soundtrack and all that. So I'm just thinking, they're not going to do it again. We'll be lucky if we get any sort of release in future from it. And then all of a sudden this is just how things go, isn't it? This is just when you just
when you're least expecting
completely resigned to it never showing up. Somebody throws you the whole sequence in a phone call at 5 a.m. It's bizarre.
How was this specific copy of this lost Metroclub scene? How did this come to be? Where did this come from?
So, what we've been able to figure out, and again, it was as soon as I'd seen it, I was like, we've got to get this out there. And the mistake I kind of made was, it's like, well, it's not kind of mine to kind of to do that.
To post.
Yeah. So I'm like, what's the best way we can get this across, and what's the, how immediately can we do this, and where's the original? Can we get that transferred? And it was like, whoa. So Phil Hawkins, bless him, who does a fantastic podcast himself, had managed to during a conversation with Paul Fishman. Paul Fishman is the guy from a band, an 80s band called Reflex, who had been contracted by Canon to do the soundtrack for Superman 4.
Okay.
They had been contracted to do the incidental music, some of which still survives, and some of which was in the original version of the film. The scene where Clark and Lacey go to the workout, to the gym, sorry.
No pain, no gain.
No pain, no gain. So there's a bit of their music there. So some of it did get through, but there was a whole bunch of unreleased tracks that luckily were released in and of themselves as part of the soundtrack releases, because for some reason, the soundtrack releases for every Superman film are so much better than what they managed to pump out with the DVDs and the Blu-rays. I can't figure out why, but the soundtrack releases are always so good. And the other, I'm so disappointed by what they managed to put out. But anyway, I digress. That music we had, and so that was another lead into what could have been, because it kind of provided that in the nightclub scene itself, there were at least 4 tracks that he'd produced that were going to be used in that sequence. And one of them was called Revolution Now. That was the kind of, if you like, hit song from the soundtrack. And another one called Life's Too Dangerous. Both of which are, pretty thumping 80s tunes in and of themselves. I really like them, without the attachment to Superman 4. But nonetheless, they were supposed to be included, as well as a lot of incidental music. And so that much we had. And then when you see the clip itself, what has happened, like with everything else, all the stuff that released previously, because it's a work print, the soundtrack is not on there yet. And so I remember the abject horror of everybody back in the day when the Nuclear Man 1 Superman fight had this dreadful temp track that I'm sure you remember.
Yeah,
this,
it did.
This plinky,
real kind of cartoony, kind of,
plinky
slapstick,
plinky plonky thing that was supposed to represent, Nuclear Man 1. But in this instance, so in this clip, obviously on the night when they're shooting at the nightclub in London, they've got Trapped by Colonel Abrams, which was another thumper from back in the day, and they've got Sade's Your Love Is King for the slow dances.
I know that one.
Yeah. So
I know that one.
So that's what they were. That was actually playing during the sequences, and that's what they're actually dancing to, if you like. And so what happened is that we think is that sequence was put on a tape, just a standard VHS, sent to Paul over here.
To lay the music on
to lay the music, specifically for his music cues. so he could decide at which point he wanted to drop in. So I'm sure that Paul, because I think Paul worked on Iron Eagle and all sorts of Canon films.
Oh wow! Yeah.
He was kind of their go-to guy for music. So I think he's got loads of this kind of stuff. But I think he just happened to mention to Phil that, like, I've got this taped. I don't know what's on it. Do you want to have a look? And of course, Phil, being very savvy, just takes one look at it and says, "Oh boy, this is big. This is really big." So, and that's where the ball started to roll. And again, I was like the third or fourth person that came on board to say that we really need to do something with this. And so that's kind of how we got started. But that, you know, it did take a long time because, as I say, I kind of wanted to run with it and just throw it out there as quickly as possible. And of course, you can't do that. You know, not only is it not yours to begin with, but you have to at least go back to where the tape originated from and say, you know what, is it okay if we do something?
Can I share this, please?
Yeah, please, sir, can we do this? Because it just felt so wrong to kind of keep it to ourselves. And you know, I just wanted to, because it's so integral and it's so important to the Superman fans, as you described. That,
well, I mean, it's 40 years later, and it's brand new footage of Christopher Reeve in his prime playing Clark Kent and Superman. It's unbelievable. It's absolutely it's astounding. It's unbelievable.
You know what I mean?
You never think you're going to see it, and then here it is. I couldn't believe it when it dropped. So when you did get the thumbs up to do something with the footage, what did you decide to do, or who did you go to, or what was the process that followed in relation to that?
So Phil was really cautious, quite rightly so, that the tape be. I mean, it was kind of like in a nuclear briefcase. You know, it would chain to your wrist. It was one of those things where it's like, well, Phil, have you taken it to one of these places? Because you see this advertised all the time. Just get it converted. And
you mean you didn't just trust it with Royal Mail? You didn't just throw it in the letterbox?
This was precisely his issue. He said, you know, if you think I'm just going to post something, you don't send the ARC FedEx, do you?
Well, maybe you do. I don't know.
Well, it's in the crate, but it's ready to go. But even so, you don't entrust it, do you? And so he was right not to do that. So I had to. Again, this is months. I mean, this whole process took months. But eventually, I travelled down by myself to London. Well, I took a friend, but I travelled down to London, and I met a guy on London Bridge who delivered me this package. It was all very cloak and dagger. This chap called Mark, who was absolutely lovely, but I didn't know what the guy looked like. I had no idea. I'd never seen him before. And I was stood.
Do you have a red rose or something?
You know,
a code word.
I was expecting him to pop up wearing like a Mac or something, and I'm stood on London Bridge just waiting. And my mate says to me, "Well, you know, what's this guy look like?" And I was like, "I don't know." He says, "Well, how are you gonna know? I mean,
how are you gonna find him?
10,000 people here right now. How are you gonna know who this guy is?" But sure enough, as soon as he emerged from the subway, I was like, "That's him." And he handed it over, and so I raced back home, and because in the interim, what I've promised is that to Phil, having had no luck with these companies that can transfer tapes because they won't touch anything that's copyright material.
Okay.
I was like, well, you know what? I'll just do it my damn self. So you know, I went. I have a video recorder. I've got one. It's a fabulous little piece from years ago. I went out and bought an IO data cable, which is the best one you can get. And I put it through OBS Studio, and I didn't have a particularly easy time transferring the footage because, you know, the aspect ratio of it right in the middle of this frame, for some reason I couldn't get that to work, so I had to do it over and over again, but eventually I got it. And there it was, you know, a huge sigh of relief all round that the footage had been transferred to digital. Yeah, digital, finally. So, and there it is. But then the kind of decision was, well, the decision to make was, well, what do we do with it now? And I think that, again, Phil was like, you know, it's not ours. It's not only is it not Paul's and not ours, but it actually belongs to Warner Brothers. But, you know, at the same time, we need to get this out there. And so a decision was made to present it in a way that, you know, you couldn't So for all those people out there that are looking to drop it into their fan cuts and stuff, we apologise, but the only real way to do this and still maintain any kind of grace with its originators is to present it in this way. It's the only thing we could do. I'm sorry we can't give you the as it comes. Maybe at some point in the future, I don't know, but I think Phil's feeling was that if we present it in this fashion, that might help push. And the interest generated by it, which has been huge, by the way, as we'd expected, it's absolutely massive. The responses to all three of the versions we've got out there has been absolutely massive. That it would push Warners into thinking, well, God's sake, why don't, it's a bit like the Schumacher cut of Batman Forever. It's just one of these things that just keeps nipping at them, as if to say, well, let's get this done, shall we, guys? You've got, the onus is on you now. I don't think fans could have worked any harder to get this bloody stuff out there. So why don't you just pick up the baton and run with it? That's all we're asking you to do. So I think that was his feeling, and I completely agree with it. And hopefully something will come of it. You can only cross your fingers. But to have got this, to have seen this, to have it
unbelievable
in its purest form, I still have to pinch myself now. I mean, I did a video about it, which you may have seen. It's on YouTube now.
I have, yes.
Yeah,
I was going to plug that as well.
I just sit down and I just completely kind of,
And just for listeners, where can they watch that? That's on the Supermania 78 channel.
So it's on the Supermania Kate Wonder Europe YouTube channel. And I just kind of sit there and squee about it the whole time. I haven't watched it back, but I'm pretty sure I'm incoherent the whole time in my excitement about it.
And for those who don't know, Aaron Price, who actually did the logo for All-Star Superfan podcast for us a couple of years ago when we were launching, he gave you a dig out as well in terms of some work with the footage. Can you talk to that a little bit as well?
So yeah, Aaron was one of the guys that were involved before I was. So he was
very good. Okay.
Yeah, he was well on his way to already. He was thinking about, because that's what he does. And he does so well. I mean, what an opportunity that is to kind of, to run with and see what you can do with it. I was less interested in that because all I was interested in originally was to get that clip as it was, flaws and all, and to preserve it. Yeah. That was my focus. But as soon as I finished the transfer, he was like, well, I'll take that, please and thank you very much. And I'll run away with it and see what I can do. But I thought, well, you know what, I'm going to make a bit of a nuisance of myself here, and Aaron and I have known each other for years, and, we've collaborated before on some of the clips, and my favourite one of his updates is the Great Wall of China, where he redoes it like it's scripted, where he rebuilds it in super speed. So he photographed my Hot Toys figure to do that. So we've always been bouncing backwards and forwards, and so I kind of said to him, once I'd sent the clip to him, I was like, well, what are you going to do here? What's your intentions? Because, I'm kind of like, all of a sudden, now that it's here, I'm kind of proprietary about it. Because I'm like, hang on a second. I've waited 40 years for this sunshine. You don't go along and you ruin it now. And of course, his ideas were great. But, my priority was kind of like, well, let's drop the music back in. Let's, if we're gonna do this, then let's do it as it would have been. And let's present it as it would have been in the finished picture. So we've got the music, we've got all the source music now. That's fantastic. We can throw that in there. What can we do to tidy the effects? Now, Aaron, because he's so good, what he will do is he'll do update effects and everything. But then they'll be, to my older eyes, they will be too advanced. So okay. I will look at something and I will go, you know what? If that doesn't look like it was done optically in '86, then we can't have it. It turned into a complete collaboration because everything that he would do, he needn't have. He could have just gone and done it and said, here it is, here's the finished thing. But he didn't do that. He came back to me with everything that he wanted to change and said, what do you think of this? And I was like, because the first point of concern was, that ridiculous sequence where Clark blows with his super breath, that couple.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. So the main body of the sequence is Clark doing a bit of silly dancing in the nightclub with Lacey Warfield. When he's walking in, there's a couple there that have they give the impression they've travelled quite a distance to come to this nightclub. That's kind of I don't know, is it like the Studio 54 of Metropolis or whatever it is?
Exactly. Yeah.
And just being the nice guy that he is, at some point he goes outside to the hot dog stand where they're getting a hot dog, and he kind of blows them into the nightclub. And I like it. To be fair, that just doesn't work at all. So I appreciated Aaron trying to do something with it.
It doesn't work at all. It didn't work at all, and it's dreadfully embarrassing. But I think now that those streaks are in there now, it's very reminiscent of, with a whip cut where you'd go from outside to inside in one shot. It's very reminiscent of the comic books back in the day. So on that level, it works. But yeah, so there were those kind of things that we had to address. And again, there was another sequence towards the end where Nuclear Man is taken outside by this. Well, I should say he's kind of absconded by this girl that runs him outside.
Enthusiastic young lady.
Yes, and she knows what she likes. Put it that way, and as soon as she gets her just desserts, and Clark with his superhero gets alerted to that, he leaves the club, and there seemed to be kind of like a bit of a jump cut between Clark's exit and Superman's entrance, and so Aaron decided he wanted to fill that sequence in, and I'm like, well, how are you going to do that? Because I didn't want to use any, there's a huge debate about AI that I'm not even going to enter into right now. But so he actually shot a sequence himself of the shirt rip, because that was missing as well. Let's do a shirt rip, because it's the one thing in Superman 4 that isn't consistent with the other three films. There is no shirt rip in Superman 4, which is a shame. So we sought to redress the balance by doing that, which was fine. And then he thought it would be great to just show it some kind of transformation running down down a corridor, so Superman could emerge from the exit, which we did use AI for a couple of seconds of that. But I think I think it works well enough. But it tells the story, which is the most important part. But how exciting to just go from having nothing to having two versions of the thing. So for me, I'm happy with what we managed to transfer. What we managed to salvage has made my millennium.
For anybody listening, if they want to check out the footage, Martin, where can they check it out?
So it's on YouTube. Phil Hawkins has a channel. He's done a presentation of it, and Jim Bowers has also a channel. We've done like a different surround for both. I didn't want to add to it. I didn't want three versions of it out there. I didn't want a channel of. I didn't want it on my channel as well, because I thought that was overkill. I didn't really want to saturate everybody with it all of a sudden. So my contribution to it is the kind of commentary that I did, where I've got the footage playing in the background, and that's where we're going to leave it. I think it's over to the fans now, and hopefully they're enjoying it as much as we did putting the whole thing together, us as a unit, if you like. And I just couldn't be happier. I just couldn't be happier that it's out there.
I'm so happy for you.
Because a lot of people have said that, Alan. They've just said to me, I think that they realise what it's meant to me, and it's kind of like, well, congratulations, Martin. I'm like, well, what for? It's like, because it's like I haven't done anything. I've literally not done a damn thing. But it's like it's like bringing a baby into the world or something. It's that kind of. It has that kind of significance, because the performance in it. I mean, Chris is in the short sequence. That wonderful shot.
If you think his dancing is silly in Superman 3, wait until you see him in Superman 4, everybody.
Wow, it's very reminiscent of that, isn't it? The way that because in Superman 3, when he does that little wiggle with his backside just before the slow, I can't watch that without creasing.
I love it.
And he's just the same in this, but he's Clark. I'd be interested to know what viewers think, but he's Clark in this is a bit more assertive. I mean, when that little guy has taken Lacey off his hands, and he just taps his shoulder and goes, bye-bye.
Yeah.
That's
not the Clark from Superman the movie. Absolutely
not. No, that's not the submissive one that we've grown up with. So that was interesting to see, and the way that when they're dancing and they're having these conversations, and Lacey and Clark being from two different worlds, And then, you know, they're finding this common ground, and she's saying to him, surely you've been in relationships. She's basically trying to see, you know, where he's at. And he's saying to her, like, look, you know, I know that you're kind of ashamed of your upbringing and your life and that kind of thing, but, you know, I've not been any luckier than you have. And so they've just found this common ground romantically. And then to do that wonderful shot where they, you know, they
float.
They pan down and they float and they begin to kind of rotate. And he says that line that we haven't heard since 78, where he says, "I've got you."
Yeah.
I was like, wow, what a terrific throwback that is. And, you know, it's a character moment. So that from that point alone, not only was it great to find the footage, but it was great to see that the footage was good. You know, there were elements in there that was fun to see.
Like it's debatable whether restoring all of the cut footage would actually make Superman 4 a better, say an air quote, better film. But when you see little character moments like that, I mean, that's worth all the effort to make sure that this is safely preserved and that people can enjoy it finally after 40 years, I think. Tell me something, now that the Metroclub scene is safely at home, is there anything left on your most wanted list for Superman 4, The Quest for Peace? A particular shot or sequence or something that you think might still be out there?
Well, that's the real question, isn't it? And my response would be, I think that I don't know that it's going to happen. I mean, I had a page on Facebook called Restore Superman 4, which Facebook took down for some reason. But my ultimate goal was to see the film as it was intended. That's not changed particularly. For better or worse, that's another question entirely. But, you know, we can make those decisions once it's out there. Until it is out there, we've got nothing that we can talk about. We've got these bits. And I think that to drop these bits in an attempt to, which, you know, folks, to be fair to them, have spent time and effort doing, it just serves to frustrate a bit more, because then you're just getting a little bit more of it and a little bit more of it, but it's still not complete. There are some, I'm sure that Warners have absolutely everything. And I think that the theory about the music rights not being cleared meant that they cut around that sequence. That's why it wasn't included in the DVD release. Otherwise, we would have had it years ago, the same as we've got the rest of it. I think there's loads of effect shots that, especially from the fight at the end with Nuclear Man 2 in Metropolis, I think there's a whole bunch of stuff that's missing from there. You know, I'd like to see the whole thing. And if that means it's a work print, then so be it. And if it means it's a work print that can't be restored, then so be it. As long as it's all there. It's not for us to kind of decide what happens to it after that. It's a shame that Mr. Fury, again, doesn't want to get involved. But who's to say that, you know, if the elements were discovered, that he would? So we're just, it's funny, isn't it? Because we're just inching that much closer to the finish line. And I don't think it would take much to just get us over it. I mean, especially with this discovery, this is so massive that, you know, it's kind of like, well, you might as well now. You know, you just might as well get it out there in whatever form.
Just do it.
Do it in whatever form. You know, and the possibilities, the potential for it, you know, what's going on right now between Warner Brothers and Paramount and or Netflix or whatever, whichever way this deal flip-flops and ultimately ends up. And, you know, in the future we've got Supergirl coming, we've got the sequel to the newest Superman. You know, it's not going away. I don't know why it isn't going away. I mean, I'm doing my part to kind of keep it fresh, but, you know, it's for a very kind of specific audience, if you like.
And we're touching on the 40th anniversary next year. You
Good
know,
Lord, yeah.
You know, what a perfect time to just release something. It's such a pity. I got the Steelbook collection last year for the 4 movies, and it's a beautiful set. It's lovely to have it, but oh my God, to just have the completed Superman 4 ticked, and that would have just been, you know, the cherry on top. It would have been absolutely perfect. But look, fingers crossed with people like you out there, Martin, constantly going through the archives of everybody's old VHS shelves. Who knows what we could turn up?
Yeah,
yeah.
For anybody that's concerned about it, I don't think that I'm finished.
Good.
You know, it's really satisfying. This is the biggest breakthrough we've ever had. But all it does is it serves to kind of prompt you to go even harder at getting the rest of it. So yeah, the book does not stop here.
So, Superfans, that just about wraps it up for this episode of All Star Superfan Podcast. Remember to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at All Star Superfan. We're also on Blue Sky, we're on Threads, we're on Patreon. You can leave us a voice note on SpeakPipe. You can email us at allstarsuperpod@gmail.com if you want to send us an email or a voice note. And don't forget to check out the Inside All Star Superfan Facebook group. Stay tuned to the end of the episode to hear Rob's thoughts on this recently discovered Lost Superman media. And remember, what we've discussed tonight is more than just a footnote in a production diary. It's the recovery of a lost piece of the Superman mythos. For decades, the Metroclub sequence was the ultimate what-if for the fans, assumed lost to time forever. But today, that gap in the legacy is finally closed thanks to Martin and his team of Superfriends. To the fans listening, remember that history is only lost if we stop looking for it. I'm Alan Burke, and this has been All Star Superfan Podcast. Stay safe, stay super, and take care out there.
Hello, everyone. Rob here from the All Star Superfan Podcast, coming to you from my ongoing sabbatical. Apologies that I've been away for so long. It won't happen again. No, I'm getting married, and I'm also in the middle of playing the lead in a community theatre musical. So my time has been very limited lately, and that's why you haven't really heard from me. But I just wanted to jump in and say how incredibly grateful I am that this long-lost, deleted scene has finally seen the light of day. And I want to extend my thanks and congratulations to Martin Lakin, Aaron Price, friend of the show Mark Witherspoon, and anyone else that played a part in getting this into our eyeballs. It was such a delight to suddenly see it pop up on YouTube, and I really, really enjoyed watching it. That being said, I am kind of okay with this scene being deleted from the movie. I've kind of said a lot in the past that as much as I love Superman 4, I think they made the right decision in taking out some of the Lacey stuff. The Lacey Warfield, I feel that whole like subplot of Clark starting a relationship with Lacey Warfield, it was never really my favorite part of the film anyway. I feel like Superman and Lois's relationship is really the heart of that film, and the Lacey stuff kind of just takes away from that a bit. So I'm kind of fine with that the way it is in the theatrical cut. Yes, Nuclear Man falling in love with her kind of just comes out of nowhere. There's a little scene in the theatrical cut where he sees her picture in the paper. That's fine with me. That's all you need. Why does Superman know who the woman is at the end of the movie? That's a bit of a head scratcher, but you know what? I'll go with it. But that being said, no, this is a fun scene. Definitely a different speed of Christopher Reeve Clark Kent than I think we're used to, even in this particular film. I was getting Street Smart vibes off him more so than Clark Kent. It's an enjoyable little scene, and I think the location they had is pretty spectacular. And as Martin said in his lovely video as well, the way they cut between the actual real life location and the set that they built on Elstree, the exterior set, is seamless. It looks lovely, and it looks great. Yeah, so it's a really nice scene. What a treat to be able to see Christopher Reeve play Clark Kent in a completely unseen moment for the first time ever. Like, to actually get to see that is such a delight, even if I'm kind of fine with it not being in the movie. But even though it's not in the movie, someone should definitely edit it back into one of these fan edits. There was a lovely one, the Superman 4, The Quest for Coherence, where they put absolutely everything back into the movie, using the deleted scenes, using the score and everything else. And the one major missing scene was this nightclub, Metroclub scene, and they actually used a comic book adaptation for that up until now. But now they have the scene, so they can just plonk that in. So I really can't wait to see that too. If they do a big, fantastic, full-fledged master cut of Superman 4, yeah, I guess that this should probably go in there. It just wouldn't be my favorite. It wouldn't be my favorite way to do that. I would probably leave out this nightclub scene, and I would also leave out the scene at the end of the film where Clark and Lacey kind of break up in the taxi. I just don't think you need those scenes as much. I think the Superman and Lois stuff really does all the heavy lifting there in terms of bringing some heart and emotion to the movie. But This is absolutely incredible to see. Long live Superman 4. And I hope to be back on the show very soon. Thanks, guys.